Hi. Hi, Juliana.
Yeah, Juliana is not in the meeting at the moment. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
She told me that you'd be on today's session. Thank you so much for being available. I'm hoping that she might be able to join us before it's over. But let's see if she can join us before then.
Okay. Where are you based?
I'm based in Abuja, in Nigeria.
Okay.
Yes, I'm based in Abuja. She mentioned that you had, I think there was a program you invited her to attend, an AI program or so.
Yeah, she did. She participated in a big event that I organized. When was that? It seems like forever, but it's actually kind of recent. Maybe a couple of weeks ago, 3 weeks ago.
Yes. It's not up to a month.
Yeah.
I'm
in Rome right now, but I just got back from Boston. I was at Harvard for a 2 days program. It was really intense.
Wow, that's really nice. Well, I beyond the mentees asking their questions, maybe much later. Personally, I'm looking at the possibility of trying to narrow down into the AI space. It's not something that is really too common in Nigeria. I have a master's in ICT and telecommunications law from Strathclyde in Glasgow, Scotland. So I'm thinking of maybe going ahead to do a PhD. So I think today's session is actually for people like me as well that want to start out on something new within the field of artificial intelligence.
I strongly recommend you do it. I was in a meeting with your ambassador, and she was so knowledgeable about AI. It was really amazing.
Wow, that's very encouraging to hear.
Yeah. What's the format? Can you tell me how is the format?
That's for today's session.
Yes.
We have some of the mentees would make very short presentations. Okay, we are not having presentations today. I think today is basically for Q&A. Today is primarily for Q&A. Those that have questions in starting out careers in areas of artificial intelligence, fintech, intellectual property, health tech, energy, diverse aspects of the mentorship program that will cover. So they will have the opportunity to ask their questions on what are the best ways to start a career in any of these areas. So I think today's session is purely a Q&A session. So we are hoping that other mentors would join us much later or even now to also answer questions around starting a career in any of these fields. But for me personally, I'm quite interested in the artificial intelligence area. It's an area that we actually before we start properly, I was reading an article. I was reading an article on artificial intelligence directors in boardrooms. So I found that quite fascinating and interesting, where you have robots attending board meetings, advisory board meetings for companies. So the amount of data that the AI system would have to be able to make certain positions known to the company management team that an individual might necessarily not be able to compute as much data for companies to be able to reach certain decisions. So it's quite interesting to see that even within company law, we are beginning to have, in some parts of the world, in Hong Kong, for example, we are having AI directors that are also shaping decisions that companies are making. So that for me is very fascinating and quite interesting. So I'm sure that today would be really an awesome time with all our mentors and of course our mentees. So I'll be handing over right now to Mr. Hussein so that he can set the ball rolling.
Good evening, everybody. Please, can you all hear me? Please just say yes. Anybody? Okay. Thank you. Hussein Mahadi. I'm the moderator for today's session. As we all know, today is the 8th week of GIPSY Mentorship and Internship Program. And the topic for today is starting and sustaining a thriving practice in artificial intelligence, fintech, intellectual property, health tech and law, the energy industry, and finally, patent drafting. So we have mentees on each of these areas, each of these courses I just mentioned. So we'll be taking them on starting and sustaining a thriving practice. So thank you, Mr. Joseph, for the head start and letting us know how impactful and educative today's session is going to be. We are so happy to have you here with us, Mr. Francisco. And we are also hoping that other mentors will join us very soon. So we have 4 mentors for today, Ms. Nolwazi, Professor Francisco, Eliogma, Oshide, and finally, Mr. Joseph Obo. So quickly, before we jump into our mentors, I'll quickly read what the program is all about and make some few announcements. So GIPSY Mentorship and Internship Program is a quarterly program for students and young professionals across Africa. Mentees are afforded the opportunity to access valuable advice, training, network, mentorship, internship, discussion forums, industry updates, and resource materials from experienced mentors. The program seeks to encourage continuous training, development, and evolution in Africa and around the world. You can watch our videos by searching for GIPSY on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and other social media platforms, hashtag GIPSYMIP. So some of the objectives of the program are to provide easy access to quality professional guidance, training and resource materials for students and young professionals in Africa, to facilitate dialogue and network among experienced and less experienced practitioners and stakeholders, and to transform mentees into mentors and leaders for the next generation, and finally, to facilitate fellowship, internship, scholarship, and job placements for the mentees. That's what GIPSY Mentorship and Internship Program is quite all about. We are all advised to put on our videos. As we all know, today's program is being live streamed on YouTube, and you are also advised to edit your name session on your Zoom application. Thank you very much as you comply with that. One of the announcements I'll be making next is that there's a 30-minute one-on-one private mentorship session that GIPSY organizes for its mentees, for her mentees. So if you are interested in having a private mentorship with one of your favorite mentors, you can register through the link bit.ly/GIPSYPM, or you can send me a message or Miss Juliana and we'll give you the link to register. Thank you very much. And finally, I'll be taking the announcement of our GIPSY get-together party and a small picnic that we'll be making in Abuja and in Lagos. The countdown for Abuja is 15 days. So we are having the get-together on the 10th of December, and in Lagos, the get-together is on the 17th of December. I keep sending the links out on how you can get your tickets for the program. You are all advised to come and join us that day and network, have fun, and unwind. So lastly, the last announcement I'll be taking for today is the registration for the next quarter of GIPSY Mentorship and Internship Program, which is the first quarter of 2023. And as you can see, we have a new course on our sheet, which is blockchain, NFTs, and metaverse. So we advise all our mentors, our mentees, to help us broadcast this message to their colleagues, friends, and those interested in any of these areas of the courses that we take: intellectual property, artificial intelligence and technology, the energy industry, health tech and law, fintech, patent drafting, and of course, our newest program, which is blockchain, NFTs, and metaverse. Quickly, I'll be jumping to our mentors for today, and I can see we have Professor Francisco. There's a profound mentor also in our midst, Mr. Ebenezer. So we'll be starting with Professor Francisco, and I will be waiting on other mentors to join us. So quickly, you'll be taking us on our topic for today, which is starting and sustaining a thriving practice. Prof. Francisco, I'm calling on you to unmute yourself and have the floor.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so
Yeah.
Hussein, I could only barely hear you. It's very broken, the sound on your side to me. What did you? Can you please repeat just the last part of the sentence?
Okay, I was asking you to make your mentor us on the topic for today, which is starting and sustaining a thriving practice in AI.
Sustain a practice in what field?
In artificial intelligence.
No, of course, but you want it from the legal point of view, or
in artificial? I think we want to know it from the legal point of view and also from the general aspect.
All right. But with
I think we want aspects.
And you said the legal and what other space?
He made mention of the legal and the maybe some information on a general note. How can people engage? For those that have an interest in what AI is really about, I know that AI is actually very broad.
Yeah.
What are some of the ways that we can get into this scope or this space of artificial intelligence in terms of building a career within AI?
Okay, and with the legal framework.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me. It's been really a pleasure, and I'm grateful that Juliana kind of reached out. I think it's a unique space, and it's a unique opportunity that has been created for you by this program. And I was really impressed by what has been described to me as the program and the growth of views that are trying to present and the format. So I'm very glad to know that such a program exists, and I think you really are in the right place at the right time right now. So to give you a little bit of context about myself, you might have seen something. I don't know if you did. So I'm the director of the Institute of Future and Innovation Studies, which is a relatively new institute that has been funded in this American university in Rome. It's called John Cabot University. And the function of the institute is to engage with the emerging technologies of all kinds. And for a number of years, myself, I've been working in the area of artificial intelligence for the past 10 years. And it started in 2011 when I traveled to Japan to the Faculty of Engineering to start to look at projects there that in artificial intelligence and robotics, and the same in the States. And that was before there was the big move in artificial intelligence that we're experiencing now, no? And I was also very active in a community in Brussels of people working, kind of an activist community, if you wish, of people that was working in privacy. So many of the people that were working in this community, they would go to be the ones that designed the law that now governs the use of private data in Europe, the General Data Protection Regulation. The General Data Protection Regulation that became active in Europe in 2018, it's a rather revolutionary kind of legal construct because what it did was to transform the legislation that regulated private data in Europe in a very different form from the ways in which data and especially private data are treated worldwide. So to give an example, part of the regulation says that the data that you generate are yours, they belong to you, so that you have the right to do whatever you want with this data. So, but you also have the right of asking the company that has your data to provide the data to you if you ask. You have the right to get your data deleted if you wish to do so. And you have the right of transportability, which means that certain data needs to be packaged in a way that if you want to move from one platform to another, you need to be able to do that. So what is interesting about the GDPR was that it was the first legal intervention to shape the way in which data were treated in a very different way from how data are treated worldwide, in the States, for example, but obviously also in China and other places where the level of control on the personal data is incredible. So why is that relevant? Is because basically it brings your attention to the fact that emerging technologies, especially in the IT field, have a direct relation with regulation. And the way in which regulation is shaped, the laws that govern that regulation are shaped, has a profound effect on innovation, has a profound effect on how specific platforms are designed. So in the past few years, it's not too long, in the past 3.5 years since the regulation has started, the impact has been ginormous because one, all the big platforms had to adapt to the legislation. Two, many services were developed that are specific to Europe. No? So what they created is a specific compliance with legal requirements that had an impact on the ways in which the platforms are being shaped. No? So what is happening with artificial intelligence around the world is kind of a little bit the same. We are, in my view, just at the beginning of an incredibly transformational evolution. It's a little bit like being in the late 80s when the internet was starting to be developed. And I remember that I thought it was already very powerful when I experienced it for the first time at this university in Italy, in Bologna, the oldest university in the world, the University of Bologna. And but then we see now how fast and how influential the evolution of these technologies can be. Now, artificial intelligence is going to be an incredibly powerful force to reshape our lives. Now, what is interesting is that just yesterday, literally yesterday, I was at Harvard in Boston in a panel with Amandeep Gill. I don't know if you know, is the United Nations Secretary General Tech Envoy, is the leading voice within the United Nations for technology. And both me and him, we're very much focusing on the fact that artificial intelligence should be developed in a different way from other technologies of the past. There should be a much greater focus on local interpretations of artificial intelligence. And we were talking specifically about the fact that, for example, the global South, so South American countries and Africa, and also India, for many years, they've been kept on the side of the innovation process when it came to emerging technologies. They simply were designed in the West and then were adopted around the world, and also, of course, in Africa, but also in Latin America and in many other countries. And both me and Ambassador Gill, what we expressed, also Cameron Carey, former State Secretary of the United States, was in this panel. So it was an incredibly high-level panel. And the conversation was constantly about Africa and Latin America, and the function that Africa and Latin America should have in the evolution of artificial intelligence. So when you think about the global scenario, I think it's very important for you to be aware that there's an unusual level of attention to any ideas that come from Africa and South America in this moment in time. It's clear to many forces around the world that whenever you talk about regulation, artificial intelligence innovation, the principles that should regulate artificial intelligence, when you talk about the global laws that need to be established to create a common basis for the development, for the legal development of artificial intelligence, that voices from Africa needs to be heard. Now, let me give you an example. Very recently, I was part of a task force of around 24 lawyers between the United States and Europe. It was a transatlantic task force that designed 10 principles for the application of the law in the field of AI. It was very much based on the transatlantic relation between Europe and the States, and finding an agreement on how to create a common legal system to guarantee that the law was applied to the development of artificial intelligence in the States and in Europe. Now, it was intentionally limited, no? Because the omission of other parts of the world wasn't a mistake. It was, let's call it a design feature. The reason why it was thought that way is because we wanted to create a model that then could be expanded to a more global debate. Because one of the key things that we discussed, for example, at Harvard just 2 days ago, is the concept of technological diplomacy. Now, technological diplomacy is not really collaboration on the development of technology, so the way in which many collaborations have been made for decades, but it's more was the idea of bringing people together from different geopolitical areas, from different areas of the world, and these people to sit together and try to together come up with rules that made sense for our very different socio-economical backgrounds. So what was clear in that process, which was incredibly difficult, is how local some of the problems and questions are about artificial intelligence, and how difficult it is to reach an agreement when it comes to the regulation and the laws that should govern artificial intelligence. Now, my recommendation to you is to familiarize yourself with all the programs that are developing around the world right now to try to reach these global standards for artificial intelligence, because the world is eager to hear from Africa, for example, how you perceive the innovation of artificial intelligence in terms of opportunity and risks, and how the world should adapt to regulate artificial intelligence in a way that is meaningful for Africa, for example. And the paradox that the people that can do this are not the technologists, are not the engineers, but are people like yourselves, people that are in the humanities and in law, for example. People that are working in law are especially pivotal at this moment, because, for example, one thing that I can recommend is to engage with any areas of global regulation of AI and how African nations should be included in these processes of negotiation. So, of course, the United Nations is very much keen on doing that, but they also not the main actor, if you wish. There's many other actors around the world that are in this very moment trying to regulate artificial intelligence. There's standards organizations, there's governments, there's specific projects that have been developed for that purpose. So in terms of opportunities for you, I think that anyone with a legal background should really familiarize themselves with the very diverse legal efforts that are developing around the world, and try to organize programs that are bringing the voice of your own representation, your own voices to the table of these negotiations. And I think you should be proactive, because in a certain way, what is happening is that there's a clear willingness to try to include voices, for example, from Africa, Latin America, India, and other countries. But there's also an inability to know which projects or what communities in these geopolitical regions are doing. So, for example, the group I can see in this very room, I don't know, maybe we are like some 20 people. I would say that it would be even taking the document that we generated about the application of law in AI in a transatlantic context, so between the States and the US, taking that as an input and trying to build up an equivalent representational system or negotiation or interaction with the document, bringing your own voices about what is missing in the document, how that specific efforts might impact in your own countries, and to write a document that intersects with that, and to deliver that document to these different projects around the world, we almost certainly guarantee inclusion of your efforts in the negotiation, because there's an eagerness to do that. So I think it's not a coincidence that I'm talking to you, because actually Juliana, she participated in the presentation of that program, of this transatlantic program. The program is going to be presented at the European Parliament in a few days. I'm going to go to Brussels the 30th, and the 1st of December, we're going to present that document to the European Parliament. And Juliana was invited to comment on the document and to give input and a view. And so were people from Brazil and other representations, in this effort of having that document and using it as an active tool for discussion. So I think there's an unusual range of opportunities for African countries to contribute. Naturally, there's also many opportunities from a technical point of view. because artificial intelligence, it's if you think about it, is developing in a different realm compared to other forms of technological innovation. If you were to design or to build a factory, to build commercial airplanes, for example, that would be a nearly impossible effort, because the amount of expertise, the kind of engineering, the machinery that is needed would make it almost impossible for developing countries to participate at a global level in that economy. So much so that even China hasn't been able to enter that market, because it's one of those markets that is incredibly, let's say, complicated, as it is, for example, the sector of microprocessors. But the difference with artificial intelligence is that a lot of the innovation that is happening in artificial intelligence is software-based. So the ability to contribute with projects that are developed in Africa, it's fundamental. Of course, you're familiar with Linux and the project of Linux and how globally successful it has been. So according to me, there's two things that are very important for you as a community of lawyers, is to realize that you need to get your voice heard at a global level, and that there's an eagerness to do that. And instruments that are meaningful, for example, are manifestos or consensus documents or white papers, anything that creates a document that interacts with existing legislation that are developing globally that you find meaningful, because that could create a form of interaction with these documents. And actually, quite honestly, I see it also as a possible professional path to become an expert in the field as a lawyer. Will guarantee you, I mean, over 2 decades of improvement and possibility of growth, because naturally we are just at the beginning, and I think the negotiations and the evolution will take the greater part of at least 20 years, next 20 years. And there are many areas that will need micro and macro areas that will need regulation, basically. No? I don't know. I don't know if I want to continue, because I think I would prefer to get questions from you, so to kind of open a little bit of discussion rather than me just trying to create a big map of a complex field. What do you think, Hussein?
Yes, I think the session is interactive, so we advise the mentees to ask questions. Please, we cannot hear you clearly, and we are taking notes. So please, any mentee that has questions, you can just raise your hand. Okay, I think a mentee has a question. Ruth, Eyo, Udo, you can ask your question quickly.
Okay, good evening, sir. So my question is, how do you position yourself to be able to get across to this changing developments concerning like law and things pertaining to law, like in the global community? How do you position yourself to have access to these things? That's my question.
Are you positioning yourself in the community?
Yes, sir.
You mean in your own community or in the global community?
In the global community and in my community.
So we are basically at a stage where big global projects in artificial intelligence are very, very keen to hear even the most, let's say, even the most individualistic contributions. You could directly contribute to it. Let me give you a direct example. No? So the United Nations is working on a specific project that is called the Pact for the Future. So this is a document that will be presented at the General Assembly in New York in 2024. And there's a number of contributors that are designing this document that is the Pact for the Future of humanity, basically. And there's 5 areas, and one of these 5 areas is related to technology and, of course, to artificial intelligence. No? I have been asked to be one of the contributors to the document. Now, the beauty of that process with the United Nations is that there's going to be a section that is open to individual contributions. And so anybody can contribute, but there's different ways of doing it. Of course, you can do it individually, right? But I would say that you would have much more power if you were, for example, to take all the people in this room and create a document where you push forward for specific recommendations. So I think you can create a community growth by simply associating yourself with like-minded people with similar area of expertise and focusing specific on the legal aspect. I don't know exactly what the political dimensions are in your country, but I know that even at the highest level, right now there's a lot of attention on artificial intelligence, and I'm sure there's a lot of eagerness to be heard globally. So I think that perhaps, but that I'm not very familiar with, but even trying to reach your local government representatives, the one that are working in the field, could be another strategy. But the one that I recommend the most, based on your question of community, is that of collecting a number of people like yourselves. You already have a big community in this room. If the 30 people that are in this room create one specific group that decides that they want to contribute to the document of the Pact of the Future of the United Nations and specifically focus on artificial intelligence and how you perceive the opportunity and risks of artificial intelligence in Nigeria, for example, and the legal implications, what instruments would be necessary for you to adapt artificial intelligence in Nigeria. I think that would create an opportunity. So I think this is really the stage and the age for you to dare to reach institutions that perhaps were not available to you, or you perceived to be not available to you even 2 or 3, 4 years ago. The climate globally has changed immensely, and I know that there's an immense attention. And another simple strategy is to create these programs and simply reach, let's call them your ambassadors. I could be one, for example, people that are participating to these global projects, and that you reach and you say, this is what we are trying to do. We would like to have a mentorship and collaboration to work together towards the document that should be presented. This is a very good example of what I call tech diplomacy. It's based on the cultural elaboration of a specific view in artificial intelligence, for example, with the partners. And the partners can be very random. I mean, it can easily be based simply on your personal network, or simply be based on the fact that you have read in the news that someone is saying something that speaks to you, that is relevant to you. I would strongly encourage you to have a very organized outreach element to whatever project you might be organizing. So one is content, to say, what is it that you want to contribute? What is it that you want the people to listen to? And the other one is a very clear outreach strategy. Say, okay, this is what we want to say. Let's look globally who might be the people that we want to interact, so that allow us to become stronger and reach our targets. So that's at the global level. But to me, it starts at the local level, Ruth. it starts with communities like the one in this room. You should have a dialogue first among the people in the group, create an agenda, perhaps 5 or 10 items that you think are incredibly relevant for the present, immediate future, and long-term future. And then to try to think what is it you would like to elaborate and start to think from your own perspective, and then look partners to try to get those reflections heard by different organizations.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Francisco, for answering that question. I don't know if we can take another question. If any mentee has a question, please, you can raise your hand. Okay, in the absence of any question, I'll quickly read the profile of Professor Francisco and our second mentee for today, who is Ms. Nolwazi. So quickly, Francisco Lamte is the founding director of the John Cabot University Institute of Future and Innovation Studies. Currently, he is also a Mozilla Ford Research Fellow and the technical editor of the IEEE Peace 7006 standard on the personal data artificial intelligence agent. His research focuses on emerging technologies, innovation technologies, governance and standardization processes, ethics and impact assessment, and future scenarios analysis. He holds a PhD in sociology from the University of London, joint supervision Goldsmiths College and the London School of Economics. The PhD was awarded a research grant by the ESRC, Economic and Social Research Council UK. He has worked as associate professor in New Media Studies and Business Innovation at the Department of Communication, Business and Information Technology at RUC University, Denmark from 2009 to 2019, and assistant professor from 2007 to 2009. Visiting professor at New York University 2011 to 2012, and John Coates University 2019.
Okay, Hussein, do you mind if I stop you? Because I mean, it's very kind of you to give them a bit of a perspective, no? I think I tried to introduce also myself a little bit. But for me, it's also, this is a unique opportunity you offering me, no? Because I'm really happy to be able to talk to such an audience, no? So I understand that you might feel it's difficult to ask questions sometimes, no? But it's a lot easier for me to ask questions to you, so that perhaps we can start the conversation, no? So what I would like to know is, for example, the conversation in Nigeria specifically. I think you're all from Nigeria, or is it a diverse group in this?
It's a diverse group, sir. It's a diverse group in Africa. Mainly, they're all from Africa.
We actually have mentees from several countries in Africa on the platform: Egypt, South Africa, Nigeria, a few other countries, Kenya, Tanzania. So we have majorly, most of the mentees are actually law students who are actually engaging with the system to become legal practitioners in the nearest future. Yeah,
so my question to you, I mean the entire group, is what is it? And there's no right and wrong answers. I'm just curious, no? I mean, first of all, you clearly think there's value in artificial intelligence in your own field. No, this is probably why you have joined this group. Can you tell me what is, in your perspective, how likely is developments in artificial intelligence going to affect your own practice? For example, as lawyers, do you think it's going to be there a positive impact, a negative impact? And will the development of artificial intelligence make your work as legal practitioners better in achieving certain goals? And what do these goals look like?
All right. I think I would attempt, when a professor asks a question, you need to really think before you attempt an answer.
Yeah.
So I'll do the little I can to share. For me personally, I have a background in ICT and telecommunications law. Beyond that, I have an interest. I have recently developed an interest in artificial intelligence because of this particular program. I necessarily have not, taken. I've not found myself researching within the scope of AI, but I know that for much of what we do, even in terms of interacting with our mobile devices, that's one of the easiest ways that we can actually interface within AI. With AI, for me personally as well, based on my practice, I know that there are certain countries or certain jurisdictions where AI is beginning to affect the way lawyers actually do their jobs, the way lawyers bill their clients, the way that boardrooms, like before the program started, we had an interaction around the boardroom system in countries like in a place like Hong Kong, for example, where artificial intelligence is actually playing a very major role within boardrooms. I also know that within immigration, you have certain AI components that are also affecting the way immigration is actually being done or being practiced across the world. So for a fact, it's that in Nigeria, AI basically is still at that developmental phase. You necessarily would not find a whole lot of practitioners at your level within the country. I know for sure that a lot of Nigerians that really want to get the benefit of what AI is really about are those that might be having the opportunity maybe to travel abroad to study for maybe a master's in a related field, maybe to go further through maybe PhD programs across several countries in the world, trying to really understand and engage with the discussion of AI and the impact that it's having on us. But from a governmental level, much of the issues that are affecting governments across Africa are issues of maybe providing social welfare issues. AI might actually be seen at that level as something that is an elitist feature. It's not a front burner issue per se. I wouldn't see my president now of my country discussing issues around artificial intelligence. I don't know of any African president that maybe might even understand fully what some of these concepts might really be about, not because they may not have a full understanding of it, but more so of the fact that the issues surrounding AI are not front burner issues for now. But some of us who are within the intellectual space, we know that we are affected by the conversations around AI across the world, and much of these conversations are actually not taking place in Africa. I had cause to read through your profile, and I noticed that you've done several programs in Europe, in America, several conferences, but I'm yet to see an AI conference in Nigeria, for example. I'm yet to see that. I'm yet to see an AI conference that would have the quality of individuals on your working group that were on the panel at the presentation in Harvard University. I'm yet to see that happen yet. So when you made mention of the fact that that the voice from Africa needs to be louder, I totally agree with you 100%. So much so that a lot of professionals need to start taking interest in what the world is going to become for the future, because whether we like it or not, AI has actually come to stay. So we also need to find out that the Nigerian voice, the African voice, has to be on that global artificial intelligence table so that our voices too can be heard. We can also make very useful and important inputs that at least will be able to frame certain policies that will affect decision-making at the level of our own government. But I can tell you for sure that governments across Africa need to wake up to the reality of how artificial intelligence is actually going to be disrupting, or better yet, influencing the lives of millions of our citizens on the continent.
So the likelihood of artificial intelligence having an impact on you, it's incredibly high. Because first of all, the first stage is certainly going to be that of datification of your lives. One of the fundamental energy that feeds the development of artificial intelligence is collected data. And you will have a lot of pressure from international organizations and international corporations to collect data in Africa. You know that. Now, the way in which these data are regulated, the collection of this data, that is something that is up to local lawyers to organize. I mean, before I was giving you the example of the General Data Protection Regulation, no? So it's very common in the past decades that technological standards are being created in the West and then adopted in Africa, no? So I haven't worked very much with Africa so far, although I always interact. I always have representatives from Africa in all the projects I do. I always try to bring some voices. I haven't had an organized effort, but I did, for example, with Latin America. I created this project that was called the AI Talks, and it was a group of 35 people, mostly from Latin American countries. And we were having conversations about artificial intelligence from the Latin American perspective. I would be very glad to see equivalent projects conducted in Africa. I think if you were to organize a conference on AI in Nigeria and invite people from all over the world, you would receive incredible attention. I think it's really a moment in which you should speak up, organize your own questions, and not be afraid of engaging. You shouldn't be afraid of being behind the curve. You shouldn't be afraid of not having the language to articulate it in a way that you feel it's comparable to the way it's discussed. You shouldn't be afraid to think that the question you're asking are irrelevant to a society that is organized in a very different way from yours. You shouldn't be afraid to ask questions and reach out to people that are leading in other countries. You shouldn't be afraid to make this noticeable within your own government. I think that the attention to artificial intelligence in your country should be almost a mission, especially as lawyers. You have this unique voice. And please do understand me, right now, like never before in the history of technology, like never before in the history of technology, the focus and the opportunities for people like yourselves, people with legal expertise, to contribute to the innovation process are enormous, because there's been a total value shift. The normal practice has always been that technology was developed by commercial interest in an open market. But with artificial intelligence, there's a new formula that is emerging. It's clear that artificial intelligence cannot develop in a vacuum. It needs to develop in in a contained legal structure. So one of the things I constantly find is the gap in language between people that are working in the legal space and engineers. They cannot interact easily. So I'll give you an example. I work with the IEEE. No? So the IEEE is the biggest standards organization in the world for tech. They're organizing standards in all kinds of realms. They are the ones that decide our bolt is supposed to be designed so that anybody that wants to be building something with bolts or producing bolts will use these standards so that they're sure they can be sold worldwide. Now, Africa has been importing standards from the West, right? Because they don't have the capacity to develop the standards. They don't have the institutional bodies like the IEEE to design the standards. The very common process is that many of the technologies that are used in Africa use standards that are designed elsewhere. That has to change. And you can do it immediately. You can do it today. Let me tell you how. The IEEE, for example, the standard organization called IEEE, so it's the Institute of Electric and Electronic Engineers, the biggest standard organization in the world. They develop standards on a regular basis. And the way it works is they have an open code where people can join a standard and contribute to the debate that leads in time over a period of 2 to 3 years to the definition of the standard. You are welcome to join these groups. They are open to the entire world. So although you might not have the institutional capacity in Africa to have organizations that create standards that are that big, you should be aware of the process and the fact that you can contribute. Now, many people can be intimidated by this, but not lawyers. Lawyers normally have the understanding. They understand processes. They understand regulations. So if you read the IEEE regulations, you will see that you don't need to be an engineer to participate in that conversation. Now, I was in that standard for 3 years. I had 250 people from all over the world participating in those meetings. And many of them were not engineers. So you can be participating to these standard conversations. You don't need necessarily to contribute. You can just be a witness. You can simply participate to it. As a matter of fact, it's a very common practice. Of the 250 people that normally participate in a group that creates a standard, I would say that 30% are observers. Economic interest and political interest that want to know what the IEEE is doing and what kind of standards they're creating. So what I'm trying to say is start to be aware of the opportunities to bring your voices in existing projects. This one I recommend is incredibly powerful. Please study it. I hope Juliana is gonna, maybe I'm gonna talk with her and with you, Joseph, or whoever, the organization, because the IEEE is a very, very big organization, and the organizational structure of the standard formation there, it's so porous and open. That really means that you can really actively participate, shape global discussions about standards, for example. Do you have, as a group, do you as your students, do you have individual projects or you have group projects? How do you operate?
I wouldn't. The only thing I can say, in line with the mentorship program for AI that I actually know of, is that the mentees who are majorly undergraduate students, they meet together, they research certain subject matter areas together, and all that. They make presentations on that as well. We've also had some mentors who are also vast within the AI space. One is a Nigerian, he's based in Germany. We've had about 1 or 2 others who are actually based in Nigeria as well in the field of artificial intelligence. So I wouldn't know of any other specific projects per se beyond the mutual research on topics and areas of interest, basically. Not to sound out of place, we were thinking that we would bring in some other mentors to also share as to how people or how the mentees can start off a career. But one thing I would advise Juliana to do, I think that we might have to create maybe a unique scenario for you to really come back. I don't know how your schedule works, but it really would be nice. I feel that we've not gotten the full benefit of your presence on today's mentorship program. So I don't know, I can suggest that to Juliana so that we can actually make this more robust. We can also see the possibility of speaking to other AI practitioners who are in Nigeria so that you can have that opportunity, or we can have the opportunity to meet with you and to really share and to see how within the larger scope of artificial intelligence, how we can actually get our foot in the game much better in a way that is more impactful.
All right, so there's a number of things that we can do. First of all, I know many high-level lawyers that are working in the AI space globally. And many of them will be very happy to contribute to this group.
Yes.
So that is something I can certainly organize for you. I'm committing to that if you feel that it's relevant. Then the other recommendation I have is think of it as a two-way street, right?
Yes,
for me, it's difficult to know what you need if you don't tell me what is it that you want. It can be even the question of saying, let's say we want an overview of the legal projects that have been developed around the world, specifically in AI, and so to have a map of how AI and lawyers are engaging in this space. You would like to have an overview of all the career possibilities that might be linked for law and artificial intelligence, for example. So that's a more of a career-oriented kind of field, no? But what I recommend is also to engage more with the actual topics. I think that each one of you in this room might have an interest in artificial intelligence, an interest in making a career in the legal space, but also a specific application of artificial intelligence and law that might be important to you. I assume that as a group, you're working on individual projects or something like that. So for me to have an overview of these projects would really immensely help to know how to contribute to the conversation. For example.
All right. Yeah.
The second thing is to ask to the people participating to come prepared with questions. So to have each one of the people has to individually have thought of. Please.
Zero. Okay, gotcha.
Hello,
Can
somebody.
you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know if you wanted to ask a question. Sorry, I interrupted because.
Okay, so I think what Mr. J is actually trying to say is that we'll be giving the floor to our second mentor for today to also give us some of our own advice on starting and sustaining the thriving practice. So after that, I think we will still come back to the question and answer session properly.
Perfect.
Okay.
All right.
Quickly, I'll be reading her profile shortly. She's Nolwazi Holpe, is the Deputy Director Financial Regulation and Supervision at Digital Frontier, and listed among the 60 African women experts in FinTech 2022 by African Shapers. He is a former regulator, having worked for the Central Bank of Eswatini within the Financial Stability Unit, and moving on to establishing the FinTech unit as a project with the CBE, which she managed and oversaw the department and finalization of the CBE's first regulatory sandbox guidelines. Nolwazi is an experienced financial regulation, microprudential and microprudential supervision specialist, and she is passionate about innovations in the financial sector, especially her potential to leave on no one behind. Her expertise lies in payment systems, central bank digital currencies, data privacy and protection, inclusive green finance, and gender inclusive finance, where technological innovations have an opportunity to exponentially contribute to this in positive ways towards the SDGs. So we are very glad to have Ms. Nolwazi with us today. I'll be giving her the space to mentor us.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you. I've been enjoying your conversation and your insight so much. Thank you so much, Francesco. So hello, everyone. Thank you for the kind introduction. Just a bit over myself. I have a background education to my master's in economics, and that's what led me to financial regulation as my first job. And I fell in love with working in regulation from the Financial Stability Unit, where we were doing macro-prudential supervision, to now working with Toronto Centre and CGAP in developing a program for financial sector authorities exclusively in micro-prudential supervision. I started off with Digital Frontiers as the regulatory program lead, to where now I'm the deputy director. And in between, I was a consultant, or rather a senior research analyst in a consulting firm called the Center for Financial Regulation and Inclusion, or CENFRI for short, where my focus was on working with regulators to assist them on how they could develop their frameworks for responsible regulation for innovation. And my focus area was particularly in payments or payment systems. And so I've worked worked a lot on fintech projects, and also managing the fintech unit as was established under my leadership within the Central Bank of Eswatini. And coming from that fintech perspective and the growing public interest in issues like data governance, data privacy, and including cybersecurity, I think as you're going about establishing and sustaining a thriving practice, it's important definitely to be concerned about what's coming ahead. But it's very key to also know what is happening right now. And I think, Francesco, you mentioned something about that a lot of these key or future or emerging trends or in technology have regulations in the advanced world, whereas the global south is majority trying to grapple with it. And so I think as you're starting or sustaining your practice, one way you can set yourself apart is making sure that you gain as many learnings from the advanced world, but you can set yourself apart by ensuring that you don't repeat the history that has been always done in sub-Saharan African countries, for example, where we do the copy and paste regulatory approach, or when you advise or if you're focusing your practice in advising regulators and how they develop their regulations and so on, that you don't advise them to follow the copy and paste approach, because context is so important. You cannot take GDPR and try to copy and paste it into Sub-Saharan Africa. We have significant data collection challenges. And so GDPR requires quite extensive data collection. And as we know, AI will significantly influence us. It's coming, because it can't come right now, as we're still trying to solve or grapple with our significant data collection challenges. Artificial intelligence and its subsets of machine learning, deep learning and neural networks can thrive or give us the insights we're looking for through having big data. And we're still trying to work through those as most of the global South. And so as you're thinking about how to set yourself apart as your law practice, or how to develop your business strategy as a startup law practice, those are the things I would advise you take in mind, whether you think about artificial intelligence, fintech, and especially when you're looking in the direction of energy or green finance, where everyone is all about net zero, and the significant challenge where the global South, or let me just rather say Sub-Saharan Africa, is responsible for the least amount of carbon emission, but however suffering the most from the climate change challenges, where the last COP was devoted to inviting developed country members to have money in a fund to support the lower developed countries in their resilience towards climate change, because a lot of least developed countries or lower developed countries are struggling with water resilience, especially because of climate change. And so you can explore how you can especially partner with regulators in developing these regulations, because you can build your capacity faster than they can, because challenges from a recent paper published by the BIS, if not today, yesterday, on capacity building for financial supervisors. One of their biggest challenges is the red tape behind procurement, which you won't have. And so with working with them, you can quickly set yourself apart. Okay, I think I need to stop soon. Sorry, I talk a lot. You will need to you can set yourself apart through coming with that extra specialized knowledge, because in the study they showed that the financial sector authorities, for example, where I come from, my background especially, are open to working with external consultants and then showing them their specific country context and how they develop their regulations and so on. But there's also many applications outside of financial regulation, where like the FCA and them planning to introduce their new consumer duty that is outcomes based, applies to different authorities, and you can leverage that as well, or leverage working with other law practices that are maybe smaller into working, as Francesco has said, developing a group that will respond to like international research or contribute to it, or when there's a call for comments on like publications by international standard setting bodies or bodies like the World Bank, and they put out a call for comments. It's most likely to be heavier if you come together as like an association in your country and you bring forth the suggestions of the Association of Legal Practitioners in Nigeria, for example. Yes, time is running out, so let me open the floor for questions. I'd very much like to engage with everyone in the room.
Okay,
I like
thank you
a lot of
very much.
engagement. Sorry, I teach a lot because I'm also teaching some economics courses for the undergrad degree of University of London, which was built under the direction of the London School of Economics. So I like encouraging engagement apart from the courses I teach with Digital Frontiers.
Okay, thank you very much, Aloisi. We're very happy, and that was very educative. I know we would love to keep listening to you and Professor Francisco all day, but I think we have time constraints, so just have to keep everything short for today. So quickly, I'll be inviting any mentee that has question. Mr. Joe, I think your question will come after the mentee's question. So please, any mentees that have question, right, you can raise up your hand quickly. Okay, I can't see any hands yet, but I think some of them are cooking their questions, so we just wait on them. So Mr. Joe, you can ask your question quickly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so very much. It's really nice to be in the same room with very accomplished individuals like yourself, Hofi. I hope I got the pronunciation right. Yeah. So
yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. So basically, one of the things I've actually noticed personally, as it has to do with regulation in Africa, maybe in most parts of the world as well, because if we've been following the news globally, we noticed that the cryptocurrency exchange FTX has been in the news for a lot of wrong reasons. About whether they have, I don't know if they've already filed for bankruptcy yet, but a whole lot of people have lost so much of their resources, their funds, and all of that. So my point is this: why is it that regulation or regulators appear to come to the party after much of the damage has already been done? I don't know if you can address that, because such a global entity to have run for a very long period of time without, in fact, there is no corporate governance system in FTX as at the point that it came crumbling down. And there is a regulator within the United States and some other countries where FTX actually has some level of presence, and nothing was actually done. So do we hold the regulators accountable for the lack of ensuring that normal processes and procedures exist in companies that are actually doing business with billions of dollars of funds of individuals and all that? So my question is actually just around some of these issues, basically.
So the FTX story is a bit more intricate and more complicated than simple of blaming it on the regulators, because with Sam Bankman-Fried, he had influence within the SEC, where that's why it just turned a blind eye. He had relationships. I think his wife or someone had a relationship with the senior person within the SEC, where they acted like they couldn't see that something was wrong inside. Like they acted like they couldn't see that there was that so-called Chinese wall between Alameda Research and FTX was really non-existent. And also the US is still trying to find the most effective way to regulate crypto exchanges. And so and the thing is, we're going into a recession, and you know that recessions always, they always are like a surprise to everyone. We're in a recession, actually, not going into, we're in one that's about to get worse, because you can see globally, central banks are increasing their interest rates, and that is a classic sign of it's getting bad. And so FTX started say bailing out these the small crypto exchanges, and they took on a lot of cryptocurrency, which is all good and fine until they sold that cryptocurrency for their own token, which is a problem, because if other people are buying it, then it's fine, it keeps its value. But if now you and maybe you and Binance are the only ones owning your currency, is it really worth something, or do you just flush your money down the drain? So yes, the regulator is somewhat responsible because of that person who chose to turn a blind eye. And no one didn't really expect to see the crypto version of a bank run. It was unfathomable. And the regulators should have been more vigilant, especially because these crypto exchanges are taking consumer funds. Any institution that is a deposit-taking institution should already come into the purview of the supervisor, because that's in the let me say formal payment system or formal financial sector, in the centralized financial system. Any institution that takes consumer funds immediately needs to get some form of license, designation, approval from the regulator. And so there's quite a lot of moving parts that resulted in the sudden collapse of FTX, where then Sam Bankman-Fried immediately jumped on a plane and ran to the Bahamas, where there's no extradition treaty between the Bahamas and the US, and they filed for bankruptcy and appointed a new CEO after he immediately resigned as CEO. And it's causing so much contagion in the crypto exchange market all over the world that even Luno here in South Africa has announced that so far our customer funds are safe, but so far. So definitely regulators, you even saw this coming, because a lot of regulators were publishing that they're trying to find a way to regulate crypto assets and trying to map everything out and figure out their stance. And then FTX bomb happens. So you could see that actually they were all thinking about it as if they were suspecting something bad was about to come, but it happened before they could close on it, because again, regulator red tape is the worst, and I'm speaking about this from experience. Did you want to add on something onto that, Francesco?
Yeah, it's a very good case. Actually, we were discussing it also 2 days ago. So you're fully aware of the geopolitical dimensions of the problem, no? In the States, there's a lot of hesitance in regulating or hyper-regulating. And also the legal system works in a specific way, because they evolve their regulation based on cases that are discussed in court. So you first need a case in court, and then that case becomes a legal practice. In Europe, we are using a very different approach. In Europe now, we are kind of preempting the possibilities of infringing on certain practices, especially in the banking sector. But there are two geopolitical, fundamentally different approaches to innovation. In the meeting, I was in the States for 2 days just recently. I mean, there was the former Secretary of Commerce. The resistance that it's still embedded in the States in regulating emerging practices is immense, because it's a model that has created world leadership for them, is to leave free reins to all these kind of innovations. The other discourse that was in the room, specifically about cryptocurrencies, is that they're not too unhappy to see them fail, because they're clearly competing with the system that is governed by geopolitical forces, and so they are obviously looking at it, but they're not unhappy about them failing, because the lack of confidence in this emerging system, it means for them to regain power and control. There were three organizations that were looking, three standards organizations that were looking at the company for a while. And they were all very soft, as you correctly said. Part of it was personal, but also part of it is they're leaving it be. Now, imagine the consequences of something like that in fundamental AI applications, where you leave the innovation process totally to the innovators, to the companies, and think different fields, because it can be finance, but what about health, for example? Think of a failure of that scale in other fundamental infrastructure if you delegate to innovation some of these innovations in AI, for example, without regulation. So one of the biggest things that needs to be, in my view, there's two things that need to that are overlapping with what you just said. One, the mindset. We need to understand that we need to start to think about legal practices and legal standards before specific cases like the one in the cryptocurrency, but there's many others that we can mention. And two, we need a global regulation, because it's not possible to think of distributed risks created by these technologies as solved by local solutions. It doesn't work. I mean, these operations live in the virtual space. They can easily move from one place to another. So we are moving more and more towards risks that need to be governed by global legislation. I mean, that's what I wanted to say. This is a really wonderful group and a wonderful conversation. Thank you very much for inviting me. I know that you want to close soon, but I strongly recommend.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Nweze and Professor Francisco, for also making that contribution. I think we have a very profound Gypsy mentor with us, and I can see he has been with us from the beginning of the program. I guess he's playing the mentee side of today's program, but we'll still fish him out regardless. So Mr. Ebenezer, please, I'll call on you if you have any contributions to make. If you have any question, he's a mentor for Gypsy Mentorship Program. He's a very profound mentor, and he takes us on the course Health, Tech, and Law for this session. So Mr. Ebenezer, I know Mr. Joe would also have more questions for Professor Francisco. I don't know, but that will be after Mr. Ebenezer's.
Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want to thank the organizer, Juliana, and her team for doing this. Like the moderator said, I would prefer to be a mentor today because it's always a learning process for me. Learning is endless. It's both ways. While you teach, while you encourage others, you are reinforcing what you already know, you are learning. Then in the course of research or preparation, you might have need to unlearn. So to that extent, I am an ever-learning student. Then straight to today's topic, I don't know which of them you might want me to contribute, but generally, starting a thriving practice. The last speaker said something very striking and important. While you know what is happening currently, it is important that you have an expectation, have a preparation for what your industry might be faced with in the future. Now, it could be an emerging area. It could even be what people are already experimenting with that is not enforced yet. But have your mind, don't overlook it. Don't say, okay, we are here, we've come to stay. So nothing will push us away. Technology can push you away and make you redundant in your sector if you are not prepared and open-minded to embrace changes. It doesn't mean that you embrace everything hook, line, and sinker as it comes. What it means is that you accept, then sift. Accept, sift. Don't be too far behind. Don't be too forward such that your business becomes one of the early casualties if the experimentation goes south. But be somewhere in between, such that if there is need to retreat, you can retreat and save your business. If there is need to make progress, you can quickly jump in and become part of the early beneficiaries. Then, very key, to develop a thriving practice, you must know your craft. You must invest in yourself. You must invest. Knowledge is key. And in this era, knowledge changes per second. What you thought was okay, example, the legal profession. I'm a lawyer by training. What you thought has always been the position of law. It might have stayed there for 20, 50, 100 years as the legal principle. And there is a recent judicial authority that was delivered maybe 2-3 days ago, maybe last month, and you are not aware, and you are still stuck to your old principle, you will go to the court and make a fool of yourself. You will write a legal opinion for your client and have the client lose money because you were not in touch with what the current position is. So we cannot overemphasize the place of knowledge, not just knowledge, relevant knowledge, not just relevant knowledge, but current knowledge as it is taught. It might not be in immediate use. Let me cite an example. Here in Nigeria, the principle of law has been that when we talk about recovery of premises law, the principle has been that the lawyer or the landlord has to serve 2 notices. You have to serve first the quit notice, then you have to serve another notice known as owner's intention to recover possession. A lot of cases were turned down in court for not following these preconditions, so to speak. So the landlord will say, okay, the tenant will say the notice is invalid, and the court will strike out the case. But sometime recently, the Supreme Court held that whether the notice was served or not, the moment the landlord serves a court process on you, a plaint or a writ of summons on you, demanding possession, repossession of his property, you have been put on notice. You now know what the landlord wants. So you cannot come and say, no, I don't want this. The notice is invalid. It was supposed to be 7 days notice. He served me 6 days notice. Unfortunately, people who are not aware of this recent position of the law are still stuck on the issue of invalidity of notice every day in courts. So for you to have a thriving practice, you also have to network, be in the circle of your people, be in the circle of your colleagues, have them as friends, network, ask questions. Don't be an island. You don't know it all. Yes, you might be intelligent. Yes, you might be resourceful, but the truth is that you don't know it all. There are things that could be brewing that a friend will just chip. Okay, why don't you think, why don't you look at it this way? Be humble enough to learn from your juniors as well. Be humble enough to learn from anyone. So it is not enough to boss everybody around Oh, yes, I'm the boss. I have been in this game for the past 10 years. I've been in this industry for the past 30 years. I've been in industry for the past 50 years. You can reel out the first 10 most successful practitioners and not call my name. No, no, no. You'll be so shocked that your colleagues, once they notice that arrogance, they will leave you alone because you are now Mr. Know-it-all. Until one day you go and embarrass yourself and embarrass your clients. And you now see how foolish you have been always and that you don't know it all. So, one, be open-minded. Two, be industrious, research. You may not have the money to buy all the books, but the internet is there. Let the internet be your friend. What you do not know, a principle you have not grasped, ask questions from colleagues, from seniors, and be guided. Then, most importantly, be courageous. Sometimes it takes courage to stand out. That is what we mean by thriving. Once you know you are doing the right thing, put all your efforts in it and boldly defend what you are doing. Sometimes it is that boldness to stand out. We say, okay, why don't we give this person a shot? Because the big names are there, they will swallow you. In fact, the whole place is thick and choky. Another thing you might want to do for yourself is specialization. Can you carve a niche? Can you build a name for yourself? Yes, every industry is broad and wide. While you have the general knowledge of the industry and practice, can you develop yourself in a specified area? Can you feed your mind and develop your expertise in a specified body of knowledge? Let me use myself as an example. I am a lawyer. I do full-time litigation. I do everything a lawyer does. However, I have decided to settle for medical law. Medical law is an emerging area of law in Nigeria. There are not too many people. I have spent more than 10 years in this area, gathering knowledge, building, toiling. Now, it may not look rosy because the cases are not there, not about the cases. But shockingly, when they are doing something, I'll be on my own, and somebody will call me and say, I want to do this. Okay, colleagues will even call. There is this. What is your advice? The other day, someone called me. I thought he was a year my senior. He called me and asked a particular question on an engagement with hospital, how he should go about it. After I advised him on what to do around that, I was doing something else and I stumbled upon his profile. We are doing a program together, and I happened to be in one of the committees that will harmonize people's profiles. And his profile came in. And I looked at it and I said, wow, this guy is 4 good years my senior. But he doesn't have that knowledge. So for you to have a thriving practice, be excellent in what you do, one, specialize. Now, specialization doesn't mean that you shut out every other angle. No. Feed your mind, know what is happening, but specialize so that if they call this area of practice, your name comes up. If they want to call 3, 4, the first 10 people in this area, your name will just jump out because you have invested, you have developed yourself in that area. Then integrity is important. Most times, before people buy your product, they buy you. Who are you? What is your personality? So while you are building your organization, also build yourself. People will do business with you once they find out that you are a person of integrity. So it is important. Then while you are doing that, respect your professional ethics. Whatever profession it is, they have their code of ethics. If you run foul of your professional ethics and you have cause to be penalized by your professional disciplinary organ, it is a stain on you. your clients will blacklist you, no matter how intelligent you are, no matter how efficient your services are. Once you have that thing that this man has been disciplined by his professional body, you cannot explain it away. You know, most times when these things happen, it is in the news. XYZ has done this has happened. So you do, even when you are exonerated eventually, let's assume you are, you do not have the opportunity of going back to everybody who heard the first time that you were penalized. You do not have the opportunity of going back to explain to them that actually it was a mistake and all this and all that. So this will be my few contribution. Thank you, and thank you once again for the opportunity. So I want to go back to my role, or my mode rather, today as Elena and a mentee and continue to learn. Thank you. Meanwhile, let me quickly salute the presenters who have presented so far. I have enjoyed every one of them, and I look forward to hearing from other presenters. Thank you very much. I yield the mic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Nolwezi, I think I saw your hand raised, so I don't know if you have any contributions to make to Mr.
No,
Okay, if there's any question, I would like to take it.
No, I
Okay,
was clapping my hands in agreement to what he was saying.
Okay, thank you very much. So the floor is still open to our mentees to ask their questions. I will still be waiting for you. You can raise your hand, and when you raise your hand, I will know that you've indicated that you have a question, and I'll allow you to ask your question. So quickly, I will be moving back to Professor Francisco to give us his final comments and word of advice to all our mentees in this space today. Just like a take home, starting and sustaining a thriving practice in whichever areas. What are the advices you think we can give to us?
So I want to, I enjoyed very much your presentation. Sorry, I can't pronounce your name properly. So is Ebenezer?
Yes, Ebenezer.
Ebenezer, thank you for your presentation.
Yes.
You made one comment about creating a community of integrity. So that's the one conclusion I want to have. Please consider the people that you have in this room an incredibly powerful network. So create that network is something I always advise my students. If you spend time together, you already have a basis for a community, and work with integrity. So if you create a community of integrity, the payoff is going to be very, very big in the long term. There's no shortcuts to a solid career, and so that's really my conclusion. I think it's incredibly important that you, as a community, with integrity, you bring your voices to the global discourse. And I hope I'm going to continue to collaborate with you. I'm looking forward to continue this. I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, Professor. Definitely, we'll be inviting you to other programs, which the first quarter of the next session of the program, which is next year. Also, I'll be giving the floor to Nolwazi to give us her final comments and advice.
Thank you so much. I just want to say in my parting comments, thank you for the invitation. I've thoroughly enjoyed this time with you. I think, I would like to be involved in the next session and find out where everyone has, what everyone has accomplished in the time apart from today to our next meeting. and definitely advise you to meet up more often on your own. See if you can form even associations in your own respective countries to amplify your voices, and see what emerging technologies are relevant for your country context. Because again, context is so important, because your passion in law is driven, I'm assuming, to serve the people in your jurisdiction. That is the ultimate goal, to serve the people. And in defining what your practice is for, what it's about, and what the long-term goals are, please don't lose sight of who the people and their lives it will touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I can see Mr. Professor is leaving. Thank you very much, Professor Francisco. We are so happy to have you here today. We look forward to having you in our next sessions. I think I'll give the floor to Mr. Joseph Obo to give us the final remarks and the closing remarks before the program will end.
All right, I'll do that.
Apologies for having to close the conversation, but I have my 11 years old daughter waiting outside the sports facility, so I have to go. But it was wonderful. Apologies if I forget now. Huh? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So this is actually to convey the thanks and the appreciation of our founder, Juliana, for putting all of this together. I want to really sincerely appreciate Mr. Ebenezer, Nowazi, Professor Francesco, and of course, all our mentees. You guys are the real MVPs. Thank you so much for staying the course till the very end. I really want to appreciate your duty, your courage, your commitment, your dedication, and of course, the fellowship that you share and that you have actually shared this past couple of weeks. We are almost coming to the end of the Gypsy Mentorship and Internship Program. I think we have just a week more or thereabout. I would want to say a very big thank you to each and every one of us. And hopefully, as we continue to engage, let's not forget that integrity is actually key in anything that you intend to do. Integrity is actually very important. So till we come your way again next time, do have a very wonderful evening. I don't know if Hussein has a final word, you can still do that, but it's still a whole lot of thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot for being part of today's session. God bless you.
Thank you very much, everybody. I'm so sorry. My network reception is really bad. That's why you can't see my face. I always like to smile and put my face out there for everybody to see. Please, that's what we advise all our mentees to also do. Videos are live. You don't know who one of your friends that will be looking for advice in any of these topics, and just stumble upon seeing you on YouTube mentoring us, and that will be a very nice courtesy. So quickly, our mentees, I observed that a lot of people currently exams in schools. That's why the turn-up is very low. We understand. And for those that haven't submitted their week 8 projects, please, we are still waiting for you. Please. I can see some groups are active and some are inactive. Please, I would love all groups to cooperate. Finally, as we said, we'll still be having the Gypsy get-together party. I'll still be sending the links to you. It's happening live in Abuja and in Lagos. So we encourage everybody to register, get the ticket, and come to the get-together. So with this, I would say bye-bye to everybody, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a wonderful evening and weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye.